and welcome back to another episode of Arts Dynamics Talks. I am Sofie Marin, founder and CEO of Arts Dynamics, and every week I speak live with leading thought leaders and experts, entrepreneurs, creators, people who are at the very forefront of music, arts, culture, tech, media, entertainment, business, entrepreneurship, and impact. As you can imagine, we always have a lot to talk about. These guests that I am very privileged to invite every week are, I have to say, the top of their game. And speaking of game, today is going to be a gaming focus. Actually, the title of today is Game On. And I came across this very, very impressive woman a while ago. And we started talking about gaming and gamification and inclusion. And yeah, we're going to talk about so many things today in this podcast. But without further ado, please just let me introduce to you Hind Toufga first and foremost, and just say, Hind, welcome to today.
Thank you. It's just an honor to actually be a guest at your program. And I'm glad you remember we met actually last year in August in Epicenter. And it was a pleasure to meet you and talk as well as you just mentioned. The discussion went from art to gaming to, all the creative things that are like very fascinating nowadays with the innovation and tech world and everything. So it was really I still remember that conversation very well.
Yeah, me too. And I find that it is such a privilege to speak with other inspired people like yourself when we can talk about, in this case, gaming, without it having to be too technical, but actually, what does it mean? What do we use it for? I find in the cultural and creative industries, there are often these silos between the different genres and sectors. So let's say you are in music, or you are in visual arts, or you are in the performing arts. You don't very often tend to cross over into the gaming industry, whereas the gaming industry is a huge industry in itself. And I see more and more how these lines are being blurred from an entrepreneurial perspective. So I would just love to have like an honest and raw and frank and inspired conversation with you about that. But first and foremost, Hind, why don't you share a little bit about yourself for the people who are listening? Because you do have a lot of, you have a lot of different competencies and skill sets, both as an angel investor, you are a veteran in this field, you are also a women's ambassador for the gaming industry as well. So Hind, over to you. Who are you and what led you to be in this fascinating industry that we're talking about today?
Well, if I will have to be fair with the whole journey, I have to start from the beginning, because usually when let's say, for example, take the stage and I start talking about games and then I mention my background, everybody gets very confused. It's like, okay, so you're from North Africa and you're from a particular generation, and then you actually work with one of the early women who worked with games coming from that part of the world, which is also very shocking. So I have to be fair and start from the beginning. So my journey started very, very early in the 90s. And I was one of the few gamers at that time. Everybody knew the retro games. So my journey started there. And just the fact that I was a hardcore gamer at that time, because of the culture that I was in, that it was very limited for women, and gaming was the tool that I could explore the world through the TV, just sitting there in my little bubble, and I could see stuff that I wouldn't otherwise see if I didn't have this portal or tool. So actually the games, they spiked both my interest in art to begin with, and then the second thing was actually tech. So I chose to study tech, was one of the few females also, because of the games. So it started there. And I never actually thought that I would work with games ever, because in that time we had very little knowledge about gaming as an industry. So you don't imagine paying bills from working with games. So it just, and you can't even say it to people that I dream about being a game developer or a game designer. So that doesn't even exist. So after that, just to make it short, I moved out after the war in North Africa, and then my first job in the game industry was in Turkey. So they needed people who could speak several languages. Obviously my language was Arabic, and I started with B games, Zynga, in mobile games. No, before mobile games, it was Facebook games at that time. So, and I think because I loved working with games, I wanted to do everything. I never said that I just want to be an artist or I just want to be a designer. Or I felt like whatever was needed where I was, I could easily just like learn about it and try. So I never said, because at that time there was no like real education in games. Everybody actually learned by themselves, just having the passion for it, and just like create and just roll with the punches, or and that's how most of those first games were made. So I started immediately as a product manager, because I was translating and doing both quality assurance and creating data for the audience in from my background. So that's why I always say that games, just like art, it's like a language to nations. So in order to make a product that would be accepted and wanted and likable and enjoyable by multiple people, you have to know more people, and you have to have a diverse team that can talk to certain cultures in certain places. So that's how it started. And so I think I came into the inclusion immediately, as one of the few females. And then from there, I moved to Sweden, and then my role changed, and I was a production assistant, and there I could do a lot of stuff. So I learned also to do UI. I learned to do UI animation in Unreal, which is everything I learned from YouTube tutorials. I always say it to the students when I speak to students: if you have the will and the passion, there's nothing going to stop against you. You just need a computer and internet, and you can go far away just by that. And of course, the will to create. So I worked there for 2 years, and then after that, I live in the north of Sweden, so there wasn't many opportunities. I was a freelancer, and there also I learned to do a lot of stuff, like just learning by doing. And so I have a little bit of background in every sector, and I went to art school actually in here in. So that's why you and I talked first day when I mentioned to you that I did sculpture and I painted and created some characters. So I feel like I have a finger in every pie in terms of game making, and that's why it helps me with my business side, because a lot of people who work in business development, they lack the knowledge about game making. So they are more like B2B, just business and numbers and looking at it from the sales perspective. But having someone who could also understand and have had like the journey of starting as a gamer, and then so it becomes kind of like a good to have thing, like a backbone. So I know when I talk about games, I know what I'm talking about. So so it was that. And then how I got into the initiatives, because I felt like during the time when I was working in games, there was a lot of things, that unspoken stuff that was happening, whether it's like in terms of inclusion, whether it's gender, whether it's in backgrounds. There was a lot of stuff that was not really like I felt like somebody need to do something. So I got into the women in games ambassador community. And as soon as I got in there, I felt like I need to speak more to little girls. We need to have more women, because we're still like, I think just in Sweden alone, we're like 33% in the game industry. And that sadly includes also women who are not really working with games. It's like there's women who work in HR and finance and stuff like that. So if we count just women who are working only with making games or in the creative sectors, actually even less. So I was like, okay, some of us needs to do something. And me being in the game industry over a decade, I felt like maybe people would listen to me. So I used my story always. Storytelling is always the best hook. So I used my story to come closer to more like students. I went to schools and I talked to different levels in schools, and I told them about our industry, that it's a serious job, that you could actually see yourself in the future as a artist, game artist, or sound designer, or so there's a lot of stuff within the game industry. So it's not just like, you don't need to be just a developer or a programmer to make games. You could, especially with the AI tools that we have now, it's easier.
Yeah, it is. I mean, what a journey. And you mentioned North Africa. Where in North Africa?
I was actually born in Morocco, but my family moved to Libya when I was young. So they moved I was 5 or 6 years old, and I grew up in Libya. So, and Libya was different. Libya is quite different than Morocco. Morocco is more like modern and open, but Libya was very, very, very close in terms of culture for women. So there was like very, very specific, narrow education paths that you could take. So for me at that time, I actually left medicine school to study in First Tech Institute, and that alone created a lot of problems for both my family and everybody, because it was still unacceptable, and people couldn't see you like, okay, what do you want to be like, okay, tech, what are you gonna do? We're gonna make robots, or so there wasn't even that imagination for, no, that's actually the future. So so then North Africa, but I still also think that I was in North Africa, that I didn't have any other distractions rather than the gaming that I was playing. So my life was limited. I couldn't, like I always say, that I couldn't learn bicycle early. I didn't learn to swim. All the physical things were kind of half forbidden. So all I could learn is like just do basic, domestic things and at home. And so having the portal of the game, that was made me feel like kind of futurist in my thinking, and it really impacted my cognitive it kind of like opened a lot of pathways that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So yeah.
Can I just share why I love doing these talks every week? They actually started, and you are such a great example of that. These talks actually started during the pandemic. I felt a need to speak with other creative entrepreneurs and people working in the creative space, and just to figure out what were they doing to survive amidst big change, what things were working, what didn't work. So it really became this whole sort of flying reporter situation where they're reporting back in, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm seeing this, or I'm seeing that. And depending on where they were, because they were worldwide, we got so many different perspectives. Fresh perspectives straight out of the can that particular day, just like today when we're recording this. This is you being here live with me, and we're having this conversation, and it is the very latest in your field and in what you're doing, and we're able to just tap into that vast knowledge and also get to know you better. So I just want to say again, thank you so much for showing up. For people tuning in, listening to this, do drop a hello in the comments below, whether you're live with us or listening to the Spotify or a podcast version. There are comment sections there too. Just say hi, drop a comment, and let us know who you are and where you're from. And as you just shared, I mean, your background, you've lived in different countries, you've got different cultures and backgrounds, which has obviously shaped who you are and what you're bringing to the table. So I find that fascinating. And speaking of women, speaking of underrepresented genders or underrepresentation in general, often people, there are often either people shut off and it's like, it doesn't have to do anything with me, or it's something that they work with 24/7 because it's so important. Why would you say is it important to have an understanding of diversity, equity, inclusion, women in games, and all of these things that matter so much to you?
If I will shift to the product perspective, I think since we are just like the film industry or music industry, and we make games for people, and people are not one type. There are different type of people out there, and also depends on what game you're making it for a certain audience. And the more general the game is, the more you want it to meet people where they are, whether it's different, certain class or certain gender or certain, like you just said, there's a lot of like, you have to be very careful about the games you're making and to who they're making. You have to think about how people can feel about it. If you made certain character feel bad, that might represent another type of people out there, that individuals that might be offended. So there's a lot of things that we have to consider, having a responsibility for the products that we make. If I would take an example of one of the companies that I love the most, being very, very, very careful about them making diverse teams that make games for diverse audience, and that's Supercell in Finland. So I was once I was hosted at their studio, and they mentioned how their strategy of making shuffling teams, and how every time they shuffle teams with different backgrounds and cultures, that created a very fascinating it just like kind of reflected on the product. So this is just an example. And then also the same thing, if you're making games for kids, you have to be like careful about, you know, certain stuff. Tokaboka is one of the, also Tokaboka is in Sweden, one of the studios that are using their games to actually reshape the kids, how they think, how they see the world. It's kind of like just a dollhouse if you think of it, but kids learn sustainability there. They learn to respect each other. There's a lot of like kind of values that the kids learn through these games. So I always say that games are not just of course you can read a book and you can watch a movie and then you go move on with your life, but games are something that you live in. So it's kind of like a simulator that trains your brain. So you're inside, you're living that situation, you are in and interacting also with other people, especially when the multiplayer games are. So it becomes kind of like another underworld where, you know, a copy to our world. So I always say never underestimate the power of the game industry. It's kind of like a tool to actually both reflect who we are and also like reflect the issues that we need to work on, kind of like highlight, you know. So I would love to see more diverse games in the future. I was in Morocco in the Moroccan Expo, which is second edition, which is huge, and I didn't expect that Morocco would actually step up that further in appreciating. And it's actually from the government. This was like the government of youth and communication that put a lot of money to show the value of the game industry and investing in the youth. And their argument was is like game industry, games in general, especially esport, they put kids off the streets. It helps to helps with how when rates of crimes arise and kids go into drugs and stuff like that. So when you have games, it's a good a good distraction in a way. It doesn't have to be a distraction because we can always like how can I say, we can always like guide our kids exactly like with all the things that are dangerous outside. We cannot just forbid it because people are being, let's say, addicted to games. So games are kind of like a mental trainer. Games also helped a lot of kids see themselves in the development path because it also helped them wanting to work in programming and stuff like that. So why I brought Morocco and also South Africa they have the Africa Game Week, and both locations in Africa are very keen to making games that speak about the culture in Africa, to lift the heritage. And as a recent example in Morocco, they said that they made this 3D world of Moroccan history, which probably kids don't want to read the boring history books anymore. They give them like a VR set and let them live the history within it, like the real storytelling. I got goosebumps now talking about this, but so you gotta find that the generation speak their language and make things like interesting for them for their age, because they're not like us. We could sit for hours with books. It's not that we don't want them to read books, but at least we could like in a fast speed world now, it's good to like use all these shortcuts to bring knowledge in a play way. And there's also like there's also researchers that shows that play make knowledge sticks more than if you just would read through. I forgot how it said the quote. I will put it later on in the chat. That it takes 7 times, or I think 8 times, until an information is stuck in our head, but it only takes 1 time if you're doing it through play, because when it's fun, it just sticks. So yeah.
Yeah, that's important information, and I know education in gaming and education in games is growing quickly. I've had talks recently with Chris Ebeling from Epic Games Unreal Engine. We had a conversation, so that's also a tip for people who are listening to this. Go back to that episode and listen to that too, because they talk a lot about education. He talks about education within Unreal and the world of Epic Games, and so did also Luke Savage, who we had over as a guest at our Creative Tech Summit at CIMA here at Epicenter. So education and learning through gaming, I feel if you're outside of the gaming world, we don't really hear a lot about it. But the more and more I get to know this world together with you and everybody who's, you know, so at the very forefront of things, it just opens up the eyes and ears and your mind to, and it's mind blowing to what's possible. May I ask you on that note, speaking of education, being in this world, also bringing kids in from the street, as you mentioned, that's also a huge benefit. But how do you guarantee their safety? We have a project called Cultural Firewall within Arts Dynamics, where we are focusing in on, in addition to entrepreneurship and tech and business, we have a second leg, which is all about this safety and internet safety. We had Hannah Linderstål here, who's an expert in that, who came to talk about that. And especially in the world of gaming, as you said, multiplayer, you have these immersive worlds. How do we ensure that the people who are there are protected and can protect themselves? What do you see from your end?
Well, recently I've seen a lot of improvements, and just recently I've been in. I had a talk about this topic, safety within the game industry, and it was a panel at Reboot Croatia, and the whole discussion was about nowadays there are tools to actually prevent bullying and kind of like ban certain gamers or give them like a cool down time, actually protect certain age. Like there's within the game itself, there's like a technology, I don't know what is it called, sorry to but it was a technology, because the person who was with us in the panel, he talked about it, so it was his argument. So he said that certain ages, they don't even get to see like when someone is swearing or someone is writing bad words or whatever. So it kind of like filters for the audience what is relevant and what is not. And there's an argument. Some people want those tools, and unfortunately there are some people who are against those tools as well, because they think like, oh, this is our free spot where we can express ourselves, and and it's still, if we come back to it, we're still a consumer, a consumer industry. So the consumer still is the person who puts the rules. Of course, we want the world to be that safe space for everybody, and but sometimes a lot of those goodwill initiatives and, let's say, tools, they don't get really be appreciated or taken. So I always say that we as game makers, we have the responsibility first, but then at the same time, you want to make games that sell, and probably your audience, let's say some people who like to work, like, let's say, play the games with shooting and violence and stuff like that, they want to like have this game with their other friends where they swear at each other, out of like competition. It's not that they mean bad, but part of the competition, you might be like, hey, you, blah blah blah, and between them it just creates like kind of the competitive heat. But to someone else who's outside of that, it could be like, because there's also like a lot of, you hear good things and you hear bad things, just like in every industry. There were actually some cases where there was mentioned some somebody suicide just because they were like bullied on a game. And then there was someone who actually accepted to get 66 virtual slaps in the game, which was crazy. And people were like, why would you sit there and take 66 virtual slaps and just sign off the game? I mean, some crazy stuff that you hear. And but what all we can do is to address the issues. I always speak from a parent perspective. I have 2 daughters. And at the moment, when my daughter is playing on Roblox, I have to either arrange her playtime with her friends that I know who she's playing with. So we kind of like text each other and we say like, today at 7 or today at 5, we will play for an hour. And then I make sure that she's actually playing together with her friends that we know. And or I have to sit next to her and watch and see, who is there and who's the people interacting with her, and stuff like that. So and I always say, like, we need to take this seriously, because of course we want to make games that are, we want to have a good reputation. We want our industry to have a good reputation, despite all the stigma that we already have from the past. And the fact that not a lot of people know very little about our industry, even though we have big names like Minecraft, we have Candy Crush. We have, now I'm talking Swedish, Swedish game industry. And still, if you stop someone at the streets and you ask them about some small, very basic questions about industry, they will have no idea. So it's such a pity. But as I said, that we have to be also honest and address the issues. It's not just to turn a blind eye and say, no, we want to make money. No, it's like you have to think about the sustainability of the industry, and make products that will last and will make people come back. Because the more you trust, the more you feel safe space, that's how you want to come back and play, and maybe also refer to your friends and family. So
yeah, and given your background as well in art, and you understand both worlds here, for people who are listening to this, since we do have many artists, musicians, and creators from the cultural and creative, sides, how can you give a few examples of how they could use gaming or gamification in their work? Let's say you actually paint paintings, or you are a musician and you create music, or a songwriter and you create albums, or you do concerts, or a photographer. What does gaming do for them? How can they bridge the gap between what they do and gaming? Does this make sense? What opportunities open up?
But
yeah.
I can only bring examples from what I've seen, because I haven't
Yeah.
been. I actually did the prototype for a game that it was a gamification game for kids for psychology, to be able to predict which kids are being bullied in school by certain answers. Like they will go in and they will like pick certain answers, and then you will feel how their mental health is doing, kind of like because kids are not good with words and how they express themselves. So this game is called Scolado. It's actually been bought and applied to 3 regions in Sweden, I think, so far. It's the founder is in Örebro, and I was lucky to do a prototype with them under the pandemic time, by the way. This is an example. There's another example also of a friend of mine who actually has this company that does gamify education for immigrants when they come here, and when they are working for services for older people homes, or let's say fire department. So for them to learn faster, the system is actually gamified, so they do everything virtually, and they learn through playing this kind of like a simulator how they are going to behave in certain situations and stuff like that. So there are a lot of models out there. If you look for them, there's a lot of people who've been really stepping up their game in using the fact that gamification is a faster way to learn. And like exactly like when I always take this as an example also, before the pilots they fly the real airplanes, they always train on a simulator. So that's kind of like, it gives us just a little peek on how much we can do with creating real simulators for situations, whether it's like job professions, but whether it's a skill, probably cooking, for example. Some people want to learn cooking. Imagine having this simulator game that teaches you to do like certain meals that you want to learn, and you will do like this instead of a boring manual where you will have, or how of course people can still watch YouTube, but it's not the same like being and doing it. You would rather do the mistakes probably on a game than to do it in real life.
Yeah. And also what you're saying, I think what's important here for people listening is that gaming is such a such a big area, right? It's not just one thing. And we talked before about guns, or we're talking about education now. It's like this is so much more. And I really, the reason why I brought you on so early in this season, the summer season that we're recording these sessions, is just because I see, especially in Sweden right now, there is a lot of focus on the gaming industry, but also internationally, we do see that this is a growing area in the creator economy. And I just want to open up the eyes to what's possible for creators inside the world of gaming. So I know, for instance, I do also have children. I've got 2 sons, and they've shown me a lot of music through their games. For instance, they've been listening at music, a lot of, even classical music, or
that's a huge the thing is, when you just mentioned now the game industry must be a huge thing, it's actually just having, because games are not just one specific model or one thing, that it's like different games. There's mobile, there's console, there's PC, there's VR. And then in each one of those, there's genres. There's cozy games, for example, which became a hit, where people play games to make them distress. So there's the shooter, there's the simulator, there's the adventure, there's like, it's a huge universe. So that's why I don't like it when people just pick an argument and start to argue about one specific thing, and pick up just the negative aspects and say, oh, it's just teaching the youth violence. How about the rest of a lot of games out there? They're not teaching any violence. King doesn't. Candy Crush doesn't teach any violence. I mean, why would you judge or this? Let's say destroy the reputation of a whole industry with all its variation because of one specific genre and because of one few cases? So. And as you just said now, I had a privilege to be part of a presentation here for the government. People came from all the regions from Sweden here to Sundsvall, where I live in the north, and I had the honor to speak to them about our industry. And then, of course, I asked everybody, like, how many people play games in this room, and everybody had, whether it's them or their kids, everybody raised their hand. Everybody had like someone at home or neighbor, or that's how rooted we are in society. And then after that, I asked them, So then we talked about the the KKB, the creative branches, right?
Yeah. Sectors, yeah.
Yeah, so they had a list of all the art related or creative related occupations, or let's say, genres in Sweden. And then in the list, the game industry was last in the list. There was it was like broderie, knitting, painting, all this stuff, and then the game industry was the last one. And then when I went to stage after that one, I was like, I'm so happy I'm here to tell you that actually that little lost name of us being there at the bottom, we actually have all those things in games. So music is part of games. Art, making fashion clothes, Unreal. I don't know if you have seen how they make when they make the characters and all that stuff. The hair is a lot of details and make a different type of hair. Now we're going back to the diversity also. That when you make game of people, let's say Asians, Africans, and all that, each one of them, they had to look really like the character out there. So you see how much sculptures in there, you name it. All those sectors that we have in the creativity, we have them all combined within the game industry. So of course it's virtual. It's not something that you touch, but but it's still,
it's about representation, isn't it? Representation matters. Just like Barbie, when it came, and it was just one Barbie, and then
exactly,
over the years, it's just grown and grown now to be more inclusive and have more. But on that note, I feel, again, given your vast experience and expertise, normally when we listen to talks about gaming and even diversity and inclusion, we rarely have the time to go deeper, and we still have a little bit of time today. So let's just do that. Let's just see if we can use this hour to make some change and to inspire someone to look into this more. And I would actually like to ask you, if we were to skim, let's pretend we've been sitting here for a few hours and we skip a few steps and we go deeper into the things that we might not normally talk about. The elephant in the room, even. Are there any elephants in the room that you rarely get asked about, where you feel like, but we need to talk about this? And if so, what are those?
I mentioned, I'm glad actually that you put on the title sustainability. We are a fast growing industry. A lot of studios and, let's say, publishers, and everybody's looking for the big next win. And we sadly tend to burn out our teams, our resources, and just recently there have been a lot of layoffs, and we have a lot of like ruthlessness in this industry. Of course, there's a lot of beautiful things. I just painted a whole a whole great painting of all the good things that we have, but then we had the elephant in the room is this one, that we are kind of like there's no sustainable development in gaming. Like something that you want to make something to last, that you want to make a team or a studio to last, and a business model. We need business models that are sustainable in the industry. And how are we going to do that? That's the thing. It needs a lot of combined effort. It needs to come from above. There has to be rules, I would say, from the government in how things are managed. I've seen, I mean, this is like a rocky road for all countries. It's not just Sweden, but there's a lot of injustice in a lot of ways. Like I just said, the layoffs here and there. Even I feel sorry for a lot of like indie studios who would be like all of a sudden cut on finance, without even being warned. So there's a lot of those things that are and also these publishers out there now, they're expecting all the games to be too good to be true. They want you to come with a perfect portfolio. They want you to prototype. Everything has to be polished, and you have to have a community with a lot of people and a lot of viewers. How are you supposed to make all that before you actually get into finance or help? So there's a lot of those things that I think this is really the elephant in the room: how to make a sustainable culture, and actually a culture in business that where making mistakes is allowed, and having, how can I say, it's having sometimes I don't want to go in things that I will burn bridges, but I
let's general then. We don't want you to burn bridges.
I don't want to mention this, but yeah, it's just but I gave the point. The point is that we're a lot of people are just like looking to the next thing, and no one is actually appreciating or making space for a sustainable and rooted industry instead of.
Okay, I think that's fair. And on that note, and you can just stop me anytime and we can move on. And we will definitely not net names. That's not what this is about. This is really more about talking about the things that we normally maybe we don't give room for, or we don't have time for. And I just would like for this discussion to be real and to understand this summer in 2025, as we're recording this. There is a lot of hype right now in the gaming industry. As I mentioned, there is a lot of focus on the gaming industry. We hear more and more about the gaming industry, but at the same time, as you said, there are also things that are not sustainable. The practices are not sustainable.
Yeah, we're actually going a tough time, by the way. Now when we're starting to make noise and people starting to know about us, it's the worst period actually of time. It's this year. Last year we thought it was the toughest, but this year proven to be even more harder.
Why? Tell me more about that. Why is it harder now, and what is specifically hard?
When the economy of the world is affected, of course, it affects everything with all the political changes and all that stuff. We are one of the people to get affected as well. So so this year has been tough. There have been a lot of layoffs from companies that you wouldn't even imagine that they will be laying their best people. So and now again, when you just mentioned about elephant, there's a lot of elephants in the room.
Yeah, bring the elephant.
One of them is actually women. Now we can go to the investment part. Women in the game industry in general, we lack women who are leaders. There are. It's not that we don't have. We have, but there are very few of them. Decision-making women, and also in terms of like investing in games, there are very few investors. And in general, I don't know if you've seen that. There was a big movement recently, I think in February, where all women joined forces to make this trend online on LinkedIn that women only get like 2%. So it's like in the investment world, how we're not taken seriously, how there's a lot of depth into that, but how we are not being taken seriously in terms of business in general, and then add to that working in a creative industry that the product itself is not being seen as a profitable project or something that has actually potential. So we try to do events. We have I don't know if you saw that I'm angel investor in yes, and I haven't done anything yet. I'm still in the process of learning. because I'm new into the community in general. But what I love about our community is that there's resources for everybody. You can go in, you can learn. There's like you get like a manual with all the instructions, and then we have the community on Discord where everybody puts on whenever they find a game that it's worth it to look at and stuff like that. So this is also something like we need to make big changes in terms of gender in general when women are like taking positions that are big positions that are usually are men dominated. Make space for more women, and in general, like also again coming back to the background, people from all backgrounds should be accepted and taken seriously and listened to. And what I like about this community is that it's international. Actually, women are from all over the world are in the community, so makes one very like feel like there's something is happening. We're taking small steps. We're not there. It's gonna take forever to get there, but at least some movement is happening at the moment.
But so my question to you as an investor, since you are an angel investor yourself, why do only 2% of the women actually attract investments? What could they do anything differently? Anything from how they create their pitch decks to the networks that they hang around with to the ideas that they're putting forward. From an investor perspective, what do you see is missing for women to be invested in, if that makes sense, if there is anything?
I think it's like you just mentioned now, network. I think who you know is been proven to be one of the things that made men more successful than women in general through all history, because there's a lot of like support the one you know more than the one that you don't know. It's a lot of risk if it's someone that it's totally unknown. So us women being very in general being very reserved and very, very like shy in a way, and not really out there, and not really taking spaces, daring to show up and just say what we think loudly without us being fear of being probably laughed at or something like that. I think that's the thing. There's a lot of like changes that needs to be things that need to be normalized, that it's okay to see women taking spaces and saying what they think and saying it loud, and not thinking that, okay, if I say this, they're going to think probably I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And we have a lot of those like women questioning themselves more. They don't dare to. And that's in general, even when women are like sending their CVs, they usually will always like when making the description, they're always making themselves sound less than they are. I mean, knowledgeable than they are. While on the other hand, when you see the male CV, it's always like everybody's like, I'm sure about this. I can do this. I am professional at this. But women are always underestimate themselves in general. So there's a lot of inner work to do. I don't want to blame everything on the other gender. I always say that. It's us taking spaces, us coming out there and talking about our problems and asking for help, and normalize looking for male help, let's say the other genders help as well, and this doesn't have to be just women. I think all minorities are usually in the same category.
Yeah, and to the men then listening to this, you're bringing up a valid point here, because it's one thing to claim your space and to be more forthcoming, but if no one is there to open up the doors from the inside, if you want to break into an industry or go into the rooms where you're normally not invited, you do need to have champions and ambassadors who are there vouching for you when you're not there. So I just wanted to say, Hind, on the back of what you just said, to the men listening in our network, we have so many competent, amazing men in this community, including also leaders, C-suite, board, also a lot of investors, just to step up and to know that your voice matters maybe more than you think. I think that's one thing that I take away from what you said, Hind. And number two, speaking of women, I'm glad that we're actually spending some time on this, because it's one thing if the women are not playing the game the way it should, or the way it's been set up. Do we then have to play that game, or can we create our own games? Do we have to play basketball when we can indeed play volleyball or martial arts or something else? Does that make sense?
Very
create
great.
our own rules, create our own arenas. And if that is the case, what new arenas and what new games are you seeing from a gender perspective?
That's a very great point. But then there's like two sides of saying this. Of course, we can also make our own rules or our own changes. But
Yeah.
then are we going to be put aside, or are we going to make a change with where the flow is going? That's the thing. You could there's the risk of doing your own, racing your own race, and not wanting to be part of whatever, let's say, the old system is, and then creating something different. But you might just be there and be isolated in your own.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who's going to listen? You have to like try to be, if you want to make change or noise or whatever you want to call it, better be in where everybody at. Because I always say this also when we do our women in games events, and we only invite women. I feel like we make a big mistake, because we're sitting here, we're talking about our problems and our challenges and issues, and only us listening to this. Where the it has to be done with the other gender side, hearing the because they don't expect to make any change if the other side, who is supposed to help, are not there to listen to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, and even if we, let's say, the press is actually also very, very greedy in terms of these things. As there's a lot of press about when these gatherings of women are out there, we don't hear what they talk about. If I'm not there, if I'm not actually attending the events, I don't know what they talked about. I have no idea. So
Yeah.
in terms of like making change, we have to bring these challenges and talks and argument to whatever outside, and hear what the other people think. Probably they have another answer that actually could explain a perspective that we have no idea about, that we only seeing what's beneath our feet, and we're not seeing the other perspective. So I think there should be, in all these women events, or whether it's women in games or any other initiative that it's similar, I think there should be a room for the other gender to sit there also and give their perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, like, lead by example is very important. I actually always say that one day, if I create my own event again, I want to talk about the taboo of women being their own enemy. Because now, when you just mentioned the mentors, the men mentors, to be honest, the only people who helped me when I first started in Sweden, they were men. All of them were men, and all of them were profiles from the 90s. Like I always say, that the first person who told me to work in business development and marketing was Stefan Lampingen. I always send him my like, I don't know, I'm speechless every time I have to say that. He saw me, and he saw me. You said you're working with a lot of things. You have a very like spread background. You need to focus on something. And I think that he told me that I think your superpower is people and communication, and you have to work with something that is near your personality. So he gave me this kind of like a spark. And then after that, I heard another more, let's say, advices. And this, by the way, is not a program, not a mentor program. It was just human to human. And more of these names, like his friend also, Thomas, who's the East Sweden Games manager, he also like gave me raw advices. I cannot put names, but I have a list of men who's been mentoring, helping, and but not women. And very, very few women. I think Jenny from Sweden Game Arena, she was probably one of the only unicorns who's been like really help, and I see her doing that with everybody, with women. So we have a really big problem having lack of senior women mentoring others and wanting good for them, like really wanting them to shine. And because I think sometimes it feels like they think that the pool is small, and if someone is gonna make it, they're gonna take it from like take all their resources from the others or something. Men don't think like that. They always support each other. They always have their clubs. They always have their places where they sit and talk and share. And even whether they're having good, whether they have problems, or or cheer for a success or something, we women lack that. There's a lot of women to women feud that is unspoken about, which I think is horrible, and I think we need to talk about it more.
Yeah, so let's do that. That's another elephant. I love this is turning into the elephant in the room, I'm really thankful to you for being open to talk about these things. You and I'm sure, we've been to so many events, female-only events, or gender minorities, or anywhere where we talk about these issues. It is very often the conversations often center around the same things. It's like this feeling of not being let in, not being heard, not being seen. First and foremost, I never hear it from the other side. And second of all, I very rarely hear people talk about, okay, but what can I and we do? And what do I and we do to actually lift and support others? I'm not saying that it's all good or bad or right or wrong. Obviously, there are a lot of structural problems that that are there. And I think we need to address that. But also, come on, what are we doing to support and help others? So please, let's continue on that side.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, but I mean, exactly what you're saying. I mean, I feel it's ridiculous to begin with, when I feel like someone is thinking that by someone taking space, or this is also related to Jantelagen in Sweden, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just like you're supposed to be more mutual and
don't believe that you're better than anyone else. That's Jante.
But then if you're coming from an underestimated gender or whatever background or whatever, the regular will not get you far. You have to push more to get to the half of what the others are doing. If we will say we are in a male dominated industry, okay, and I just said that women make only 33%. If we want to make a huge step, are we going to go with the same pace of Jantelagen, that we are not just gonna back and everybody should be the same and everybody should be? We can't do that. We have to push more. And I always say that to young women. I do, by the way, mentorship, and I sometimes been doing jury and talking to students. And on 29th, I'm going to do a talk with students in the north of Sweden. It's called Hula Skola, and they're very isolated in there. And I always tell them that if you are, let's say, you're far away because of your geography, you're like in the middle of nowhere, you cannot compete just like someone who lives in Malmö, where all the opportunities are there. You have to give even more to actually, like scale yourself a bit up. So this Jantelagen, or being neutral, or being lagom, as we say, doesn't work for everybody. It might work for some who has the privilege, but it doesn't work for people who don't have the privilege. You will just stay where you are if you go with those rules. And going back to the women, I also feel like we need to empower each other more. I also noticed, just this is a sad thing, like every time I share something like a good news, a good like job or opportunity, or attending an event or anything, most of the likes or comments that I get are just from men. And I try to do the opposite. So I usually write to all the women, even if the topic is not my concern, even if someone is writing about something that I have nothing to do with. I feel like we need to empower each other. We have to clap for each other. We have to like cheer each other up. And that's how we make that. That's how we raise that 30% above, by supporting each other. And I feel also that people respect you more when they see that you're actually cheering for the students, and you don't have to like only be in your own bubble and just look at where you're working and only your sector where you're working. Sometimes you have to like come out from there and look what the others are doing, what the students in Gotland are doing, what the students in future games are doing, or where are those graduates from last year? What are they now? Did they open like a new studio? What they're working on? I always have this curiosity to know what people are, and this is just by nature. I'm not just naturally I have it, because I felt like when I was a young child at that time, like them, there weren't someone picking up the hand and saying, "Come, I'll show you how to do it." Nobody showed me how to do it. So I feel like we owe it to each other that we have to do it. We have to help and mentor each other. Sorry to down the rabbit hole.
I think I love that we're able to have this conversation. And I mean, given the times that we are in right now, we see this big movement away from gender inclusion and all the things that we've been working so hard towards. I worked with Key Change, for instance, as a year. I helped them with the capacity building, and Key Change is a European project that is really championing gender equality and diversity in music. And it was an eye-opener, I have to say. I thought I was actually rather chill when it comes to this, but when I started working with them and I started to meet with all these amazing creators, and they started to share their own experiences and what they were seeing and feeling and doing and being, it just gave me so many new tools and understandings that I didn't have before. And now, so I was doing that, and then I started working at STIM as a cultural director, a director of cultural affairs, to champion the music even more. But then, given elections that have been going on in the world and where we're heading, we see now that even organizations now are taking away their policy documents stating that it's important to be gender equal and to foster this sort of inclusive work environment. Given what you are doing, what does, I guess what I'm trying to say is, on the one hand, we are not supposed to talk about this anymore, but on the other hand, this problem is bigger than ever before. Or
well, the thing is, it's a lot of organizations, they would say that they're standing for equality, and but then when you come to look at the reality of it, or what's happening, actually, it's sometimes far from and then also, I don't know who to put the blame on. Is it women being not now I'm talking about hiring more women. I'm talking about the hiring part. Is it women that they don't see themselves in bigger roles? Is it or in roles in general that, as I said, they write their CVs kind of not what the recruiter would want to see? So that makes, of course, men taking the opportunity faster. And then I don't know. This is a very, very hard. It's very, very hard topic to try to find what is wrong in here. Sometimes we blame the victims themselves and say, oh, but they didn't talk about this. Why didn't they come out and say about this, talk about their problems or issues? But then when there are platforms where these people talk, then you don't see anybody listening to them, or let's say the platforms or websites. By the way, I have to mention Out Making Games. It's also an initiative just like Women in Games, and it's for and they are based in UK, and they are also looking for, now I'm using the platform to spread the word. They want to have partnership with the companies in Nordics, and they would love to have a base in Nordic. So I just spoke with their chairman, Adam. Oh my God, I think I butchered his name. Yeah, sorry.
We can add it to the show notes afterwards. That's fine.
I mean, I've been talking to people. I don't know if you've seen that I was in 3 conferences in a row, so the names are all mixed up in my head. But I will tag it later. But this is also one of the platforms where it's made for all LGBT and minorities to use the platform for their for their voices, their issues, their problems. And usually these people are so creative. That's the thing. They're so creative. I would say these individuals that we probably underestimate, or say that okay, we want everybody to look the same. We want everybody to be the same, so that we don't have any issues. While in the real life, the more the mixture of your team, the more the mixture you have in your, whether it's team or studio, or sometimes even friends, how you get new ideas, like you said, music, for example. And a lot of creative people don't get a chance just because they're being, let's say, seen differently, or not being trusted to deliver as a regular person would do. If I would say regular is a bad word, but I mean, what the society would consider regular. Well,
And I know this time is fine. We could sit here for hours. Do you have a few more minutes? Because there are just a few more questions.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for listening and for staying with us. This is a big topic, and number one is addressing the elephants in the room. I also would like to give some concrete examples as a result of this talk that we're having today. So you've given some suggestions already for networks that people could tap into. I would love to hear more about that. So please just make a note of that. I'll come back to that in a second, because I'd love for you to share. Just like with key change, for me, key change was an eye opener. Because key change, if you have an interest in learning more about inclusion and all these things that we've discussed in the music industry, then key change would actually help you with the research and with the tools and with the strategies and the connections from people who know more. That's what I loved about it. So you don't have to be the expert. You just have to raise your hand and say, okay, I realize there are things here I don't know. Can you please point me the way? I'd love to do the same for the gaming industry as a result of this talk, so we'll do that. But there is one burning elephant that I'd like to raise here that is coming back to me over and over when you speak. And that is not only how women treat each other and how because there is this feel that we are in this red ocean where there is just competition, there is not enough room. But as you said earlier on as well, is that when women, I think the percentage is, I think when we speak or when we take up more than 30% or something like that, the research shows, I think it's 30 or 40%, then it is felt as if we're taking too much and being too dominant. So I think that research is interesting. But one thing in particular comes to mind. I've been, for the past few years, doing Muay Thai training. So I'm a martial artist, or in the making at least. And I've had a lot of conversations with my trainer from a mindset perspective. Because one of the hardest challenges has been to step into my full power, to be in my full power, and to go full steam ahead. Because every time in the past, when you have too much energy or you have too much force, if people assume that you have too much force, then you're being sort of put in your place. Don't be too much, don't take up too much space. So we've had a lot of wonderful conversations, and sometimes hard conversations, and there's been blood, sweat, and tears about being in your full power. And I remember one time in particular when I had long hair and I decided to just cut it back short to be in my own, who I am as a person. I have never shared this, but I wanted to share it today because this is, I think, the essence of what we're talking about. So one is the structural problems that we're seeing, and if there is structural support or not, and you've addressed several of that. But then it's also the inner mental game. Not only if people are allowing us to be and do certain things, but it's also us allowing ourselves to step into that place, because it can be really darn uncomfortable to be seen, can be really darn uncomfortable to take up that space with all that comes to it. And we are raised into different roles. We are raised to be these I can't find the word in English. We are being raised into different roles that we are supposed to take in society. And I feel that I don't hear a lot about that. I hear a lot about the other things often, but I don't hear a lot about the inner mental game of being in your full power and operating from a full cup and giving from that which overfloweth. Does that make sense to you when I say that? Because I hear that a lot from the women when I speak with, and whenever you hold the space for them, just like you've been held by the people you mentioned, I've been held by people who have space for me, and that's what I want to achieve with our dynamics too, that we hold space for each other. Often what happens, people almost break down because they're not used to being held. And when they are being allowed to be their full selves and allowing themselves, because that's where it starts, that's where the magic happens. I would love to see more conversations around that. And from your end, do you see a lot of conversations about that? And if so, where are they?
These conversations are usually have been very closed between me and another person, for example, not a group or some where we sat on a panel or something. It was more like a friend to friend over coffee or a chat. And a lot of women, they as you said, actually this is exactly what I mentioned in the beginning when I said us being why we are not being as successful as we have to be, or taking space as you should.
Mm.
And that's why I can't blame the other party all the time, because this is the issue that we have, the internal, and it comes from the social bias that we are grown up with.
Yeah, that's the word. Thank you. Yeah.
Breaking out from that mental limitation, it's usually it's your own job. Like, no one's gonna come and knock your door and try to get that out. I mean, get you out of from your head. Usually you have to do it, and we don't put those titles in panels or in discussions or in. I never seen this as a title somewhere. It's been just kind of like internal challenges that I would have talking with a friend over the phone, and and how, of course, I have also my own shadows that come more often than normal, where I doubt myself, where I think like, okay, now it's enough. You've had enough now. You should but being sometimes your ambition either eats you, that you want to do a lot, like you said, because we as creative people in general, they tend to burn out themselves because they want things to happen, and they want things to happen fast, and they want to be here and there. And then we forget to take pause, like process and take care of ourselves, and also like observe what's going on and where my energy is going. Is it going to the right place, or is it just overflowing? And how can I help others? How can I be sustainable with my energy that I can help others? So there's a lot of these things that no one talk about. It's just like a lot of like psychology things that are not part of the business, unfortunately. So when we take business education, where we learn how to whatever market or sell and stuff like that, there's no chapter for this. And we as women, we have to take their own responsibility to probably talk about this. Good that you brought it up. And I don't know if there's methods that I could like, for example, impulsive syndrome is one of the biggest issues, where we think most of us deal with now in general when we work in industries where we're just few of us. And how I deal with it is just like to be upfront with my weaknesses immediately, instead of like building a picture that I am great, or like another, or very good at something. I would come and say, sorry, this is not my thing. So that way it takes away the pressure of me like fooling others or fooling myself. So I try to be honest with myself, with my capabilities and my weaknesses, whether it's with my team or my boss. Or I say, like, for example, I could be very hyper, and I probably have ADHD. I'm not diagnosed, but I probably have it, and I could talk too fast, and I could maybe jump on a conversation where someone else is talking. So I just mention all those flaws, and that way it takes away the pressure of me building a unicorn picture that is not true. And sometimes women probably need to also be more upfront about their weaknesses and their like, this is something I can, and probably this is not my strength, and so on. Like, for example, a lot of people don't like to be social in our industry. I don't know if you've heard about that. We have a lot of introverts, and putting someone to do a speech or present in a conference where they are not the person to go and break ice and speak with someone. They should be able to say it. They should be, I'm the wrong person to be sent, or I'm the wrong person to actually take this role, and just be front with it. So being able to talk about our weaknesses, exactly like we talk about our strength, is a superpower too. So
yeah. But it's also important then to have a safe environment when you can do that. Because if there is this cutthroat environment, or you feel that you cannot trust people, or people are backstabbing, just the way you said, that there is a lot of competition as well amongst women, for instance, then it can be hard to be vulnerable and to share. I think Brené Brown put it very wisely when she said, you don't share when you're bleeding, but you share when the crust has started, so you can, it's like, be vulnerable. But it's one thing to be raw, and it's another thing to share when you have a little bit of distance. So it's about authentic leadership, being authentic and genuine in who you are, whilst also having certain healthy boundaries in place. I would highly emphasize as a result of this conversation. I'm really happy that we're able to have this conversation, Hind.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to add the thing. I had situations where I was open and vulnerable, and then I got slap back. So and then what how I had to deal with it is just to normalize that I'm not going to be everybody. I always use that. I say like I will definitely have people who will understand me and close to me and appreciate me, and I will definitely have as much people who think I'm rude or bad, or there will be those people. Just normalize that you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and just that's the easy exit.
Rule of third. One third are going to love you, one third are not going to like you at all, and one third couldn't care either way.
And just focus on those who really think you are genius and amazing, and they love your energy, they want to be around you. Focus on those. And those other ones, they will exist, they will always be there. And by the way, the more successful you get, this is a rule in general, the more successful you get, or shine, or whatever in general, in any, whether it's music or games or anything, the more you will have haters. That's the rule. Yeah, so just that's also something to normalize, because we cannot be very fragile and sensitive, and oh, that person said that about me, oh, that comment or this thing, or you can't be sensitive in this. Just be you, do you. The people who are like you, they will love you, they will be there. The people who don't, just don't mind them. That's it. That's the thing I say to my daughters all the time.
But I think it's also a way of survival, isn't it? We want to be liked, because then if we have the flock, if we have the tribe, or at least we perceive that we have them, then it makes us feel safe. Whereas if we do stand out, or we speak up, or we take a stand, with that, as you said, comes scrutiny, there comes criticism, people will hate on you. Some will do it up front. Those are often the easiest. The hardest are the ones that are doing it behind your back. That can be really hard. And the thick skin that you mentioned, that's also sometimes easier said than done. Holy cow. It takes time to build a thick skin.
Yes, it's a process. I try to read self-help books. I listen to affirmations that kind of like ground me in those days where I feel like, okay, shit, now it's I'm slipping. I'm losing my balance. So there's a lot of like tricks and hacks that you could do to keep yourself on track, keep yourself focused, and especially in our age of technology, you just Google anything and you can find all the information. So I try to make use of those. And then I wanted to say something now oh my God, it was something very important I wanted to mention. The thing that we just talked about now, having people who are not liking you or whatever, it's the same even for your products. I talked to indie developers in terms of having their community out there, because when they make a game, they release it, and then they have this community, people playing the game, and the amount of feedback, they have to expect that there will be shitty feedback. Sorry for my word. They have to expect it. I mean, not everybody's going to be like, whoa, that's amazing. So when you open up the door for feedback, accept that it's going to be both bad and good. So this is the bottom line that I want.
Good then, and thank you we are actually doing a lunch plus a session today. This is the first time we're doing longer than an hour this summer, so it says something about this topic. And we are, from my end, I think we're going now into the nitty-gritty of what it's really about, because one is the technical bits and bobs that we've discussed, but the mental game and the things that are going on inside of us, that's a completely different matter. And you just said something, and I actually just forgot what that was. Can you please just repeat what you just said, because it was something I wanted to add on that.
The one when I said that when you open a door for feedback, you get everything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What I just wanted to say was that I find, speaking of women, or why it's tougher for us to get into the industry or get the funding, and we've talked about a little bit about investments today as well. I think it's also how we are being conditioned and how open we are to feedback in general. I mean, again, what are women? I mean, we're so many different things. It's not like everybody is the same, but it's really about the mental game, that inner grit and resilience and determination. I feel that we do need to talk about that more, And sometimes, obviously, you have that, but it's still hard to make it,
Yeah.
through the doors and to get the people to vouch for you, who you need to vouch for you, and so forth. But then we do have networks and people out there who are experts, and we can start by connecting with the people who actually do get it, and then hopefully they can open up the doors for us, for you who are listening here, to be and to do more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. It actually, now when you mentioned the resilient part, I always say when I do my keynote, I usually say that I've learned that from gaming itself.
Yeah.
So being a gamer, child gamer, all games are about, you have to get to the goal, you have to get to the last level, you will see challenges, you will meet the bosses, you will beat the bosses, you will, there's going to be treasures and good, and at the same time you fail and you go up and you start again and you start again and you start again till you beat the game. So this is something I gained from being a gamer. And this is the good thing from, the psychological impact that games have. But still, that doesn't mean that you made it. It's a process. It's a journey. It's a lot of layers. So yeah. So it's like going to a meditation once and thinking that, okay, now you meditated for 20 minutes and all your problems are solved and you don't need to do it again. No, it's something that you have to work on regularly. Whether inner strength, like you said, whether even creativity. A lot of people nowadays, they say that the creativity is being affected a lot. I don't know, because we have a lot of like tech life. Our tech life is taking over, or maybe the AI, that people are just relying on it a lot, that we not generating our own. So we need, all of us, we need to learn to pause and take a break and reflect and just talk to the inner us and try to find all.
And to see what we can do and to be the change we wish to see. So the question then, as we are...
Or if we do it in group, it helps more if we do it in group, because when we do it in group, that I would love to do something in the future where we can have a panel or even just a chat group like this with a couple of these, or even it's open for everybody, where we can talk about these things in group and just everyone shares their methods, what they do, how they feel. And
yeah, I think we should do that. Let's just here and now commit to that. We are community powered with Ars Dynamics, and we want to make sure that we really tune into what's cooking, what's important for real for our members and for creators and anybody who's trying to make it now in the intersection of creativity, culture, technology, and business for impact. And obviously, this is a huge topic. And as you mentioned, sometimes just by coming together and having conversations and opening up the doors. But if I would, number one, let's just do that. Number two, when we do, for people listening, if you want to be part of such a discussion that Hind just mentioned, reach out to us. Let us know, what kind of a conversation would you like to have? Do you want to have round table discussions? Should we do a panel? Should we do a conference? Should we do it in person, online? What do you want to see? So that's number one. What do you want to see? Who should be there? Also, what are do's and don'ts when doing that? Because I often find when people come together and talk, that sometimes it's just talks and it stops there, or there's a lot of victim mentality, and that we're not supposed to say that, but I'm just going to call that out for what it is. I often see a lot of victim mentality. It doesn't mean that it's not real many times, but I feel that it isn't really helpful to get stuck in that. So I would also love to, of course, to see, but also to focus on, okay, but what could actually be, what is the starting point? What could be concrete next steps to take?
Yeah. So that's to both like present the issues and then bring up the solutions as well, because it's easy to get stuck in a mental in this mental present where you see yourself like the world is against me and everybody's against me. It's easy to get stuck there and then just do nothing. And then unfortunately a lot of youth are in those just because they don't see examples. So yeah, I think this is a brilliant idea.
Thank you. And then maybe someone is being called to actually be a mentor or a coach, or someone who just want to come in and be a guide. We really, again, we are community powered. We'd love to hear from you. And I love your suggestion again. Let's do something. Let's continue this conversation. We've opened up the doors. Obviously, today is a focus on the gaming industry and women and gender equality in the gaming industry. But since we also do work with creators across borders, let's just come together and see what we can make of this. So speaking of ending on a concrete note, like a clear call to action of where people could go next after today. Number one is just reach out to us via artsdynamics.com or reach out to Hind. You'll get her details very soon too, if you want to do something together with us in the next few months. But two, you mentioned this network. Can you please just repeat the name of that? But also if you have any other resources or tools or people you would like to point people to.
Yeah, there are two more. There is the Outmaking Games. It's a community exactly like the community you mentioned. They also give like all resources and research and everything, all tools, and so there's Outmaking Games for LGBT and minorities, and then there is Safe in Our World for mental health in the game industry, and both of them are located in UK. And I will put the resources, I will put the links after this so they can people who are interested can find them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I also want to emphasize when I say the victim mentality, I just want to stress that I think we've all felt like victims at times, sometimes more than other times. I'm not saying that that is wrong. It's often the beginning, the starting point. I just want us to not get stuck in that. And there are certain things we cannot change, but more often than not, there are also things we can change. So let's focus on the change we wish to see, either through already, options that are out there or creating our own, either locally where we are based or together as a community, as you rightly said. So thank you for those tools. As we wrap up, I also wanted to share that I've actually opened up, I haven't talked about this, but I might just as well, since this is a very special session we're having today, I've actually opened up a second podcast. So this is Arts Dynamics Talks. Yeah, this is where we talk about all these things, the entrepreneurial side and what's going on in this world, very much on the outer side, but I am deeply committed to also exploring the inner world. And so I've got a second podcast, and it's called Self-Talk, and it's all about the inner mental game. I'm also a certified high performance coach. And the inner side and the mental game is really a passion project. And I'm so thankful that you gave me and us of your time today to talk about these things. So
very interesting, because I'm really into those things. It's like something that it's that the inner work is something that you do every day.
Yes. We should probably invite you there, Hind, and do like a whole inner talk session at some point. Exactly. So you can also find
the game in talk. There's a lot to say in there.
Yeah, I think so. So it's almost like yin and yang. This is the one side where we talk about these things, and then that is where we go through the inner world and what's going on and the mindset and the things that our belief systems, our limiting beliefs, our programming, all the biases that you mentioned, things that we believe are true, they might not be, or they are, and how we deal with that. So I'm just really, really, I just find that these two go very well hand in hand. So the fact that we were actually able to bridge that today, I think is as a fascinating development of these Arts Dynamics talks. So
I love it when the talks are just smooth and just following, just going with the flow without having like a scripted, a scripted interview. It was really spontaneous and very enjoyable.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's good to have notes, but I like to see where we go in the moment of things. So Hind, if people want to find out more about you, and then let me know where can they find more information about you?
Yeah, it's just my LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn here, right? Or it's Hind Toufga on LinkedIn. And at the moment, I work as a business developer for a company called Northify. So if you write Northify.se, you will find the company that I work for, and we do quality assurance. The only quality assurance company in Sweden and Nordics, by the way, for games. So. That's where you find me, and I'm usually in all game conferences. So just connect and let's talk.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So we've got that, and I actually have one final question for you, and I also want to do a shout out to Tobias. We just got a little bit of a message here. Thanks for the session. Glad of all the shared notes. Thank you so much, Tobias. And I really appreciate you showing up, and to everybody listening or tuning in live. We so appreciate you in this community, and I really do hope that these sessions give you some sort of sparks or ideas. It could be just that one thing that we talk about. Even the elephant. We mentioned the elephant like so many times, And one idea that popped up in my head as a reminder was the elephant, when they are small, they're being tied into this rope, but they don't realize when they are adult elephants that little rope, that little tiny rope cannot actually hold them, right? So isn't that a nice mental image to have as a summary of this talk today?
Yes.
But there is one final thing, Hind, and that is there anything I have forgotten? No, actually, two quick things. Sorry, I just need to squeeze them in. Number one is there anything I have forgotten to ask you? And number two, top 5 trends that you, or at least a top few trends that you're seeing in the gaming industry. So let's begin with the trends first, and then we wrap up with the final one. So number one, the trends. Are there any trends that we haven't covered that you would like to inform this audience about in the gaming industry?
At the moment, there's one trend that I'm so proud about that I have to bring up, that on Steam right now, we have 30% off for all games made in Sweden. So if you having some boring days now under the summer, you're no friends that like to play, go on Steam. You will find this games by the Swedish game industry, and there's all games you could play. You can download and play for 30% off. So take that. That's the number one highlight at the moment. I'm so proud actually that we made something like this to highlight and bring all the games together in one page. So
yeah, that's brilliant. And any future trends that you see for the gaming industry? Because we haven't really talked about future trends, and I always love to just pick your brain a little bit when I've got you here. Just like, are there any future trends in gaming that you see that are the next big thing?
Yeah, it's the AI and how we could make like a personalized user experience, like based on who you are, and the AI itself will generate a game that is tailored to you. This is something that would be huge in the future, that the same game could be different for each player based on AI creation. Yeah, it's I don't know. There's one model that one studio that did it, or probably working on it, but I think it will be the future. So that might solve a lot of like inclusion and problems. So yeah, that's it.
That's it. Okay, so final question is, Hind, is there anything I haven't asked you, or something that's really burning in your heart that you feel like you've got the opportunity now? We're a global community. Is there anything you want to share, or anything you want to talk about that I haven't addressed?
No, I think we covered everything. I think we covered everything from investment to sustainability to business to my stories. And no, I think I'm very satisfied with everything. And usually my page itself is full of a lot of resources there if anyone is interested in what I do as a jury or a mentor. And then again, I also work, as I said, in the QA company. So that's we've talked about that as well. So that's it.
That's fantastic. In that case, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I urge everybody to just go and check out Hind and her the information that you can find online. So whenever you need an expert in this field, obviously reach out to Hind, and I'm sure you'll point them in the directions that they need to go to. And also, I mean, we've talked about today that actually we might do something within the RSNM's community together as well, where we bring people together with you and all these different ecosystems and communities to open up more about these questions that we've touched upon today, to see, okay, what kind of change do we want to see, and how can we might not be able to do everything, but there might be 1 or 2 or 3 things that we can do if we just put our minds and hearts and soul to it. So I think that's exciting as a result of this talk. So that brings this session to a close. We actually went into 1.5 hours today. We could probably have gone further, but I'm going to end here and respect his time. Yeah?
Yeah. So, yeah, it was really nice to talk to you, Sofie. It felt like we're having a cup of coffee in reality.
Yeah, so nice, so nice. And for people who want to tune in with us live, come back next Thursday. It's the same time for these live sessions. They are being live streamed 12 p.m. so lunchtime Swedish time on Thursdays. Obviously, if you're listening to the replay right now, then you can just listen to that anytime. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of this talk today, we'd love to hear from you, who you are, what you're up to, what what was your biggest takeaway from today? Was there anything in particular that stood out for you, or made you think, or maybe even gave you that spark, that maybe that inner sense of wanting to do something, or make a change in your life? I would love to know that. And next week, we're going from today, and we're talking about the inner workings a lot, actually, and the game on with the gaming industry today. And next week, we are going to talk about money. We're going to talk about money and the spiritual aspects of money, and as entrepreneurs and creators, how we can think about money, and where is the money? How can we monetize what we do? How can we be in an authentic alignment with who we are as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as creators? And it is a dear friend and mentor, and is just someone I look up to so much, Chet Mujaja, who's coming. I will post more information about that soon. So tune back in then. But for now, I will post this on Spotify and on podcast platforms. And Hind again. Also go to arsenamis.com if you have any more information. We've got membership opening up right now as well if you want to join as a member. We've got our Sunday GPS newsletters if you want weekly news. So we'll also post information, obviously, about this podcast there and then. So Hind, thank you so much. And
have a great rest of the day.
You too. Over and out.
Bye.